Hello friends, welcome to the world of science fiction and forgotten words, Alien Universe. Don't forget to like, subscribe and never miss a new stories and movies from this channel. Thank you.
He didn't just stop her. He grabbed her arm, hard enough to make the entire hallway fall silent. Not because she was dangerous, not because she had broken a rule, but because she was late. And because she was human. His fingers wrapped around her wrist like iron chains, and the sharp sound of skin against fabric echoed louder than anyone expected. Students slowed down, whispers faded, and dozens of eyes turned toward the same scene unfolding near the entrance gates of Asterix Academy, the most elite interspecies institution in the world. The tall boy holding her didn't even try to hide his smirk. "Humans don't get special treatment here," he said loudly, his voice dripping with amusement, as if humiliating her was just another normal part of his day. The boy's name was Cale Riven, and everyone knew it. His family was powerful, ancient, and deeply respected among the dominant species of the Academy. Cale walked through corridors like he owned them, like every student present was simply background noise in his personal story. His silver insignia gleamed against his dark uniform, marking him as someone untouchable. No one challenged him, not even the teachers unless they absolutely had to. So when Cale grabbed the quiet human girl by the arm, nobody stepped forward. Nobody spoke. Some students looked uncomfortable, some looked entertained, but most simply watched, because watching was safer than interfering. The girl stood there without struggling. Her name was Elira, though very few people bothered to remember it. She had arrived at Asterix only 3 weeks earlier, transferred under mysterious circumstances that sparked rumors but never answers. A human attending Asterix was already unusual, but a silent human who kept her head down, avoided attention, and never reacted to provocation, that made her a walking question mark. Elira didn't glare at Cale. She didn't cry. She didn't even pull her arm away. Instead, she slowly lifted her gaze and met his eyes. And for a brief moment, something strange flickered across Cale's confident expression. Something so small that anyone blinking might have missed it. "You're late again," Cale continued, tightening his grip slightly, as if trying to provoke a reaction. "Do humans not understand time? Or do you just enjoy wasting everyone else's?" A few students chuckled nervously, while others exchanged glances. The Academy's towering glass ceiling reflected the morning light, casting long beams across the polished floor, and right in the center of that light stood the two of them, frozen in a moment that felt heavier than it should have. Alira's wrist was still trapped in his hand, yet her posture remained relaxed, almost patient, like someone waiting for a storm to pass, rather than someone caught inside one. "I'm sorry," Elira said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, but clear enough to be heard. The apology surprised some students, more than the confrontation itself. Cale tilted his head, clearly expecting anger or fear, something dramatic, something satisfying. But calm acceptance? That was boring. That was disappointing. He leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to make the moment feel more personal. "You know, humans usually don't last here long," he murmured. "Too fragile, too slow, too ordinary." His words weren't shouted, yet they carried the weight of truth that the Academy quietly believed. For a second, Alira's eyes shifted. Not away from him, but beyond him, scanning the hallway like she was observing details others couldn't see. The movement was subtle, almost invisible, but it created an odd sensation in the air, like the silence itself had taken a breath. Cale noticed it, though he couldn't explain why. He tightened his hold again, trying to regain control of the moment. "When I'm talking to you, you look at me," he said sharply. And then Elira finally reacted, not with anger, not with fear, with a small, almost apologetic smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they already know how something will end. "I am looking at you," she replied quietly. A ripple of unease moved through the nearby students. The words were simple, harmless even, but something about the way she said them made Cale's smirk falter for half a heartbeat. He scoffed, releasing a short laugh to cover the strange tension creeping under his skin. "You really don't understand where you are, do you?" he said, gesturing around at the academy, at the watching crowd, at the invisible hierarchy pressing down on her, but Alira's gaze never wavered. "I understand," she said. That answer should have ended the conversation. But instead, it deepened it. Because she didn't sound confused. She didn't sound naive. She sounded certain. Cale's grip finally loosened, though he didn't realize he had done it until her wrist slipped free. The faint red mark left behind stood out against her skin, a quiet reminder of what had just happened. Students expected her to walk away quickly, to escape the embarrassment, to disappear back into her usual silence. But Alira didn't move. She simply stood there, rubbing her wrist gently, eyes still resting on Cale with that same calm expression. "Next time," Cale said, regaining his composure and stepping back, "try arriving on time. It might save you trouble." For a moment, nobody spoke. The hallway felt frozen, like a paused recording waiting to resume. Then Alira tilted her head slightly, her soft hair catching the light, and asked a question so quiet that only those closest heard it. "Do you always grab people to prove a point?" The question wasn't mocking. It wasn't angry. It was curious, and somehow that made it worse. Cale opened his mouth, ready with a sharp response, ready to reassert dominance, ready to end this strange exchange on his terms. But before he could speak, a low vibration hummed. Through the academy floor, subtle but unmistakable, like distant thunder rolling beneath stone. Several students looked around, confused, while Cale's attention flickered for a split second. Alira noticed. Her small smile returned, just a little. More visible this time, because whatever was about to happen next, she had been expecting it all along. The vibration grew stronger, not loud enough to shake the walls, but strong enough to make every student feel it in their bones. It wasn't normal. Asterix Academy was built to handle storms, power surges, even species clashes they could level. A city block. Yet this felt different, like something old had just awakened under the floor. A few students nervously laughed, pretending it was nothing. Others checked their wrist devices, hoping for an announcement. Cale's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, his confidence looked forced. He hated anything he couldn't control, especially in front of an audience. Probably the training dome resetting. Someone muttered behind them, but Alira's expression didn't change. She didn't look surprised. She looked prepared. Cale straightened his uniform and raised his voice, making sure the crowd's attention returned to him. "See? Even the Academy's warning you," he said, trying to turn the moment back into his show. Late humans cause disturbances. A few. Students chuckled again, but it was weaker now, uncertain. Cale didn't notice the shift in their laughter. He only noticed Alira's silence, and he mistook it for weakness. He leaned in, just one step, close enough that his shadow covered her shoes. "You should learn something fast," he said, voice low and sharp. "Here, power decides what's right. Not kindness, not fairness. Power." His eyes scanned her face for any sign of fear. Nothing. That calm gaze of hers made him feel like he was punching smoke. Alira finally spoke again, quietly. "Then you must be tired." Cale blinked. "What?" "You keep proving it," she said softly, "like you're afraid someone might forget." A small gasp slipped from the crowd. Not loud, but audible. Insulting Cale Riven was like stepping into a storm on purpose. Cale's jaw tightened. His pride flared hot, and with it came the need to crush the moment. He laughed, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of laugh people use right before they do something cruel. "You're bold," he said, turning slightly so everyone could see his face. "Or maybe you're just stupid." He lifted a hand and tapped the red mark on her wrist with one finger, as if examining damage on an object. "Tell me, human, what do you even think you're doing here? Asterix isn't a place for your kind. You're a guest, a test, a joke." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And jokes end." Elira lowered her eyes to her wrist for a moment, not like she was ashamed, but like she was measuring something. Then she looked back up. "You're right," she said. Kale's smile widened. "Finally," but Elira continued, calm as ever. "Jokes end." The air shifted again. The vibration under their feet pulsed, like a heartbeat. A few students stepped backward without realizing it. Even Kale's closest friends, the ones always laughing at his side, stopped smiling. Something about the timing was wrong. Too perfect. Like the building itself was reacting to her words. One of the Academy's overhead panels flickered. A soft chime sounded, then died. The lights didn't go out, but they dimmed for a second, as if the system hesitated. A teacher at the far end of the hall glanced up, frowning, and touched the communicator pinned to her collar. Her lips moved, but the device didn't light up. No signal. Kale noticed the teacher's reaction, and irritation flashed across his face. He hated distractions. He grabbed onto the moment again, turning back to Elira with a sharper edge. "Look at you," he said, lowering his voice. "You're standing there like you have some secret." He stepped closer, and this time he didn't grab her wrist. He grabbed the strap of her bag, yanking it slightly, pulling her forward as if she weighed nothing. "What is it, Elira? What are you hiding? You think being quiet makes you interesting?" Elira didn't fight the pull. She simply steadied herself and spoke so softly that Kale had to lean in to hear. "Let go." Kale smirked, his pride pushing him to be reckless. "Or what?" he whispered back. "You'll complain? You'll cry? You'll run to the council?" He looked around at the crowd. "Maybe you'll ask the Academy to protect you." He leaned in even closer, eyes cold. "This place protects winners, not humans." Elira's gaze shifted past his shoulder again, just for a second, like she was checking the distance of something approaching. Then she returned her eyes to his. "10 seconds, she said quietly. Kale frowned. "What did you say?" "10 seconds, Elira repeated, voice calm and steady. "That's how long you have." A hush fell, deeper than before. The crowd didn't laugh. They didn't whisper. They simply stared, because even the bravest bullies didn't talk like that without backing. Kale's friends exchanged looks. Suddenly unsure if they should keep standing so close, Kale scoffed, forcing a laugh. 10 seconds until what? He raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Until your human hero shows up. Until your human parents sue the Academy?" He tugged her bag strap again, harder, enjoying the tiny jerk of her body as if it proved something. "You're not in a human city anymore. You're in Asterix." Elira's eyes remained steady, almost gentle. "I know where I am," she said. "That's why I'm counting." Kale's laughter faded. "Counting what?" Elira's lips barely moved. 9. A cold prickle ran through the crowd. It wasn't fear of Elira exactly. It was fear of certainty. People could sense when someone was bluffing. This didn't feel like a bluff. It felt like a warning. Kale's expression hardened. "Stop playing games." "Elite systems," Elira murmured, as if talking to herself. "Shield grid, secondary." She looked slightly upward, not at the lights, but through them, like she could see wires and circuits behind the ceiling. Old model. Predictable. Kale's stomach tightened. Humans didn't talk like that. Humans didn't even know the Academy's shield grid existed. He masked it quickly, but the smallest crack had appeared in his confidence. "What are you saying?" he snapped. Alira looked back at him. 8. Then the floor pulsed again, stronger. A visible shiver ran through the polished surface, like a ripple through water. Several students stumbled. Someone dropped a tablet. A distant alarm tried to start, but it cut off, as if something muted it. The teacher at the far end of the hall stopped walking entirely, her face turning pale. Cale finally released the bag strap, not because he wanted to, but because his fingers suddenly felt numb for half a second, like the nerves had misfired. He clenched his hand into a fist, staring at it, confused. Then he glared back at Alira, anger mixing with something unfamiliar. "What did you do?" he demanded. Alira didn't answer him directly. She spoke as if reading a clock only she could see. 7. Cale took a step back, almost involuntary. His friends noticed, and their faces tightened. If Cale looked uncertain, it meant something was wrong. Alira's voice remained soft, but every word landed like a stone. "You should stop touching me," she said. "Not because I can't handle it, because you can't handle what happens next." Cale's pride snapped. He hated being warned. He hated being looked at like a child. He stepped forward again, raising his hand, not to strike her, but to shove her shoulder, to show everyone he still controlled this. "You don't tell me what." 6. Alira whispered Dot, and in that exact moment, Cale's body locked. Not fully, not like paralysis, but like his muscles hesitated, like a signal had been interrupted. His hand froze midair. His eyes widened, shocked, as if his body had betrayed him in front of everyone. The hallway stayed silent, because everyone saw it, and in that silence, Alira finally looked truly sorry. "Please," she said gently, "don't make me reach 0. Cale's frozen hand trembled in the air, and the worst part wasn't that he couldn't move. The worst part was that he could feel everyone watching him fail. His pride fought like a wild animal inside his chest, screaming at him to force his body to obey. His fingers twitched, his shoulder jerked, and then slowly, the stiffness cracked. He regained movement, but the damage was done. The crowd had seen the moment he wasn't in control. Cale pulled his arm back like he'd touched fire, then tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out thin and ugly. "What is this?" he snapped, voice louder than it needed to be. "Some cheap trick?" He glared at Alira as if staring hard enough could turn her back into a harmless target. "You think you can embarrass me with a countdown?" Alira didn't smile now. She looked tired, like someone who had warned a person too many times and hated what came next. "I'm not trying to embarrass you," she said softly. "I'm trying to stop you." Cale's friends moved closer to him, forming a loose half-circle, not to protect him, but to protect their own confidence. One of them, a broad-shouldered student named Varen, spoke with a mocking edge. "Stop him from what? Talking?" he scoffed. "She's human. What could she possibly do?" Alira's gaze flicked to Varen, then back to Cale. 5, she whispered. The word landed like a nail. Cale's face flushed. Rage rose up, hot and fast, because rage was easier than fear. He hated the way the number made people hold their breath. He hated how the hallway felt like it was listening to her. He stepped forward again, forcing his feet to move with confidence, and he pointed at her chest like he was accusing her of a crime. "You're going to count me down like I'm some animal?" he hissed. "I'll show you what happens when you threaten a Riven." He reached for her again, not her wrist this time, but her collar, his fingers hooking toward the fabric. Alira didn't flinch, but the second his hand crossed a certain distance, the air between them seemed to tighten. Cale's fingers jerked, open on their own, as if something invisible had slapped his hand away. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was subtle, precise, humiliating. Kale stumbled half a step, catching himself, eyes wide, refusing to believe what had happened. A murmur swelled through the crowd. Not laughter, not teasing. Fearful whispers. Kale's jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. "What are you?" he demanded. Alira swallowed, like the answer was heavier than she wanted to carry. "Late," she said quietly, "because I was told to arrive after you." Kale blinked. "What?" Alira's eyes lifted slightly, past the ceiling lights, past the academy banners, toward a corner of the hallway where nobody usually looked. "They needed you to do exactly what you're doing," she said. "To prove something." Kale's skin prickled. "Who is they?" Alira's voice stayed calm, but her words sharpened. "The people who built this place. The people who watch everything. The people who test your power and your cruelty and call it leadership." Varen laughed nervously. "She's crazy." But his laughter died quickly, because at that exact moment, the Academy's massive central display screen at the end of the hall turned on by itself. No announcement, no greeting. Just a blank white glow that slowly shifted into a symbol none of the first-year students recognized. A circle, split by a vertical line, with a small mark at the center like an eye. Even the older students stiffened when they saw it. Kale's breathing changed. "That symbol," he muttered, and for the first time, his voice wasn't proud. It was cautious. Alira looked at him as if she was confirming something. "So you do know," she said. Kale swallowed. It's an old council mark, not used anymore." Alira's eyes stayed on the screen. "It is used," she corrected softly. "Just not publicly." The hallway's doors at both ends slid shut with a heavy metallic thud. Students jumped, startled. Several rushed to the doors, pressing palms against the panels, but nothing opened. No safety override, no emergency release. The academy didn't just lock them in. It sealed them. A teacher ran toward the nearest control panel, slamming her hand on it. "Open these doors," she shouted, but the system didn't respond. Her communicator still wouldn't light up. She looked around, panicked, and that panic spread through the students like smoke. Kale stepped back, suddenly aware of how trapped they were. "This isn't funny anymore," he said, but his voice didn't convince even him. Alira turned to him, her face still calm, but her eyes now carried a strange sadness. "It was never funny," she said. "That's the point." Varen moved closer to Kale again, trying to keep his bravado alive. "Kale, just grab her and shut her up," he whispered. "She's doing this." Kale hesitated, not because he believed Alira had caused the doors to shut, because he wasn't sure anymore what would happen if he touched her again. Alira's gaze dropped to Kale's hand, then back to his face. "4," she whispered. Kale flinched, furious at himself for reacting. Then the overhead speakers crackled, and a voice came through. Not loud, but perfectly clear, like it was speaking directly into each person's skull. It wasn't a teacher. It wasn't the principal. It didn't even sound fully human. It sounded calm, measured, and old. "Subject Riven, Kale," the voice said. Behavioral sequence confirmed. Aggression threshold reached. Social dominance pattern verified. The hallway went dead quiet. Kale's face drained of color. Who is that?" he whispered. The voice didn't answer his question. It continued like he hadn't spoken. "Human transfer subject Alira. Designation. Anchor. Protocol initiated." A few students began to panic. "Anchor?" someone whispered. "What does that mean?" Alira closed her eyes for half a second, like she was bracing herself. When she opened them again, she looked straight at Kale. "You? See?" she said softly. "You were never judging me. You were being measured." Kale's anger tried to rise again, but fear strangled it. Measured for what? He demanded. Alira's lips parted, and her voice dropped to almost a whisper. For what they're about to take from you. Kale staggered back, bumping into Varen. No, he said, shaking his head. My family, the voice cut in again, calm and final. Commencing extraction in 3. Alira's eyes stayed locked on Kale's. 3, she echoed, but her voice wasn't a threat now. It was a warning with pain inside it. Kale's chest rose and fell fast. Extraction of what? He shouted. Tell me. Alira took a slow breath. Your gift, she said. The thing you think makes you untouchable. Kale's eyes widened. His family's bloodline power wasn't just status. It was real. Rare. Dangerous. It made him faster, stronger, sharper than most. It made him feared. If someone could take it. No. Kale whispered again, like the word could stop reality. The voice continued. 2. Alira's mouth tightened. She looked like she wanted to turn away, but she didn't. 2, she whispered. Kale looked around wildly at the crowd, searching for an ally, for someone to stop this, for proof this was a prank. But the teachers were frozen, the doors were sealed, and the screen still glowed with that watching eye. The voice spoke again, softer somehow, almost gentle. 1. Alira's lips trembled just slightly. 1, she whispered. Kale's breath caught, and then the floor beneath him lit up. A thin circle of light, perfectly drawn, appeared around Kale's feet, like an invisible hand had traced it into the stone. More lines appeared, forming a pattern that matched the symbol on the screen. Kale tried to jump back, but his legs wouldn't move. The same lock that had frozen his hand earlier now wrapped around his entire body. He looked at Alira, terror finally breaking through his arrogance. 0, Alira said, almost like an apology dot, and the Academy answered. The pattern on the floor didn't explode. It didn't throw Kale across the hall. It did something far worse. It made him feel light, like gravity had forgotten him, and heavy at the same time, like invisible hands had pinned his bones in place. The glowing circle tightened, the lines pulsing slowly, not with heat, but with a cold, clean pressure that slid under his skin. Kale tried to scream, but his voice came out strangled, like the sound had been stolen right out of his throat. His eyes darted around, searching for anyone to help him, but the crowd stood frozen, too terrified to move. Then the screen changed again. The council symbol faded, replaced by a single line of text. Simple and cruel. Trial mode. Active. A second. Line appeared beneath it. Subject, Riven, Kale. Kale's pupils tightened. No, he rasped, barely able to breathe. Alira stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, staring at the circle like she'd seen it before. Like she'd lived inside. She didn't look proud. She didn't look victorious. She looked like someone forced to witness a punishment they never wanted. The voice returned, calm as a machine, but with the weight of law. Bloodline ability confirmed. Extraction will proceed. Maintain anchor stability. Anchor stability. Students. Whispered the word again, softer this time, like saying it too loudly might trigger something else. Teachers pressed against locked panels, shouting orders that nobody answered. Even Kale's friends, the ones who always stood behind him like a wall, were now stepping away, because it was safer to be seen as separate from him. Kale's whole body shook, not from the circle, but from the realization hitting him piece by piece. He wasn't being punished for grabbing Alira. He wasn't being disciplined for bullying. He was being harvested, and the Academy had been waiting for him to show exactly who he was. Stop this. Kale choked out. I'm a Riven. You can't. The circle flared brighter, and Kale's head snapped back as if something had yanked at the inside of his skull. He gasped, eyes rolling, breath breaking into sharp, panicked bursts. Students screamed no. A few ran, slamming against sealed doors. Others stumbled backward, tripping over each other, desperate to escape a room that had become a cage. Alira finally moved. One step forward, not toward the crowd, toward Kale. "Don't fight it," she whispered, voice almost drowned by the rising hum. "If you fight it, it hurts more." Kale's eyes snapped to her, full of raw hatred. "You did this." He spit or tried to. The words came out slurred, broken. "You trap. You human." Alira flinched at the word human. Not like an insult, but like a blade. "I'm not here to trap you," she said softly. "I'm here so it doesn't kill you." Kale's face twisted in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" Alira looked up at the screen, then back at him. Her calmness finally cracked, and for the first time, fear showed on her face. "A system can't take it safely by itself," she said. "It needs a living stabilizer. A body that can absorb this spillover. Someone like me." Kale's breathing stuttered. "Absorb? What?" Alira swallowed hard. "The part of you that isn't just power," she said. "The part of you that would tear you apart if they rip it out too fast." The hum rose again. The floor lines pulsed in a steady rhythm, like a heart monitor. Kale's chest tightened, and his eyes widened as he felt something deep inside him being pulled, not like a muscle, but like a thread tied to his very identity. And then the twist came, the kind that makes every whisper in the crowd die instantly. Dal Ira lifted her left hand slowly and pressed her palm against the glowing ring. Right at the edge of Kale's circle. The light didn't burn her. It recognized her. The pattern on the floor extended, branching outward, and a second smaller circle formed under Alira's feet, connected to Kale's by thin lines of light. The system wasn't just using her as a witness. It was linking them. Kale stared at her in horror. "Why? Why does it accept you?" Alira's eyes held his, and her voice turned quiet, almost numb. "Because I'm not just human," she admitted. The hallway went so silent you could hear breath. Alira closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again, and when she spoke, her words felt like the final piece of a puzzle snapping into place. "I'm what's left of the first anchor," she said. "The last one didn't survive. I did." Kale's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The voice returned, as if confirming her confession. "Anchor Alira. Genetic markers matched. Protocol verified." Varen stepped back, shaking his head. "No, she's lying. She's just a—" Alira glanced at him, and something in her gaze made him stop. It wasn't power. It was knowledge. Like she'd seen what happened to people who kept talking. Kale forced his voice out. "If you're not human, what are you?" Alira exhaled slowly. "I was born human," she said, "and then they changed me." Her fingers pressed harder against the glowing line. "They took people like you, Kale. The gifted, the feared, the ones raised to believe they're above everyone." Her voice trembled now. "And they extract what makes you special. They store it. They weaponize it." Kale's eyes widened as the reality shifted. Asterix wasn't just a school. It was a net. Alira continued, each word sharp with truth. "They needed a human face for this. Someone you'd underestimate. Someone you'd feel comfortable hurting. Someone the crowd wouldn't protect." She swallowed. "That's why they sent me." Kale's hatred flickered, replaced by confusion. "So, you're working for them?" Alira shook her head, a small, painful motion. "I'm trapped by them," she said. "Just like you are right now." The circle pulsed, and Kale cried. Out finally loud enough for everyone to hear, a raw sound stripped of arrogance. Students flinched. Some covered their mouths. The boy who had mocked, grabbed, and humiliated now sounded like someone drowning. The screen displayed another line. Transfer. 12% complete. Kale stared at it, shaking. They're stealing me, he whispered. Alira's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. Yes, she said. Kale's voice cracked. Then stop it. Alira's jaw clenched. I can't, she said, and the honesty in her tone hurt. More than cruelty would have. Not from inside the protocol. Kale's body trembled harder. Then why are you here? Why warn me at all? Alira leaned closer, voice barely audible. Because there's one thing they didn't plan for, she whispered. Kale's eyes latched onto hers, desperate. Alira's lips parted, and the words came out like a secret confession. When they linked me to you, she said, I don't. Just stabilize the extraction. The lights flickered again. The pattern surged. The screen updated. Transfer. 28% complete. Alira's voice dropped even lower, just for Kale. I can take control of where it goes. Kale's breath stopped. Alira stared into his terrified eyes, and for the first time, the quiet girl wasn't quiet out of fear. She was quiet because she had been waiting for this moment. Kale, she whispered, if you want to live through this, you have to trust the girl you just tried to break. The glowing lines between them pulsed brighter, and Kale felt the pull inside him grow stronger, like invisible threads being unraveled from his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to resist, to cling to the power that had defined his entire life. That power was his identity, his pride, his family's legacy. Without it, who was he? The question struck harder than the pain. Across from him, Alira stood with her hand pressed to the circle, her shoulders trembling from the strain she refused to show. The connection between them wasn't just light, it was sensation. Fear bled. Through it, anger, confusion, regret. Kale felt flashes of emotion that weren't his, and he realized with a jolt that she was feeling his too. The screen flickered again. Transfer. 41% complete. Kale's breathing came fast, shallow. You said you could control it, he gasped. Do something. Alira's eyes never left his. I can redirect it, she said softly. But there's a cost. Kale almost laughed, a broken sound. There's always a cost. Alira swallowed. If I redirect it away from the system, it won't go back into storage. Her fingers pressed harder against the glowing line, knuckles whitening. It will go into me. The words hit like silence after thunder. Kale stared at her. That will kill you? Alira didn't answer immediately. The hum of the protocol filled the hallway, a mechanical heartbeat counting down something nobody else could see. Students watched, breathless, witnessing a moment far bigger than a school incident. Bigger than a rivalry. Bigger than power. I don't know, Alira finally admitted. Maybe not right away. Kale's chest tightened painfully. Minutes ago, he had mocked her existence. Now she was offering to carry the weight meant to erase him. Why? He whispered, voice cracking. Alira's gaze softened, and for the first time, Kale saw something beyond calmness. Exhaustion. Loneliness. A quiet determination carved from surviving too much. Because someone should stop this cycle, she said. They take from you. They take from the next, and the next. Until nobody remembers what power was supposed to protect. Her voice trembled, but she didn't let it break. I'm tired of watching people disappear. The screen shifted again. Transfer. 56% complete. The number glowed like a ticking bomb. Kale shook his head weakly. You don't even know me. Alira gave a small, sad smile. I know enough. Kale's eyes burned. Not from the extraction, but from something heavier settling inside him. For the first time, he saw himself from the outside, through her. Eyes through the crowd's silence, through the system's cold evaluation. A boy raised to dominate, measured and harvested the moment he proved he could. I was horrible to you, he said, voice barely audible. Alira didn't deny it. She simply nodded once. The honesty hurt more than forgiveness. The hum rose, vibrating through their bones. Transfer, 68% complete. Cale felt weaker now, like pieces of himself were dissolving into light. Panic flared, but it was quieter, less frantic, because another realization was forming. Fragile but undeniable dot power hadn't saved him, but her choice might. Do it, Cale whispered. Alira's eyes widened slightly. Are you sure? Cale forced a shaky breath. If you don't, they keep it, they use it, on someone else. He swallowed hard. You said you wanted to stop the cycle. The words tasted unfamiliar, selfless. Terrifying. Lira searched his face for hesitation. She found fear, pain, regret. But not doubt. The screen updated. Transfer, 75% complete. Alira closed her eyes, drawing in a deep breath that sounded like stepping off a cliff. Okay, she whispered. The lines connecting them brightened, shifting color from cold white to a softer blue. The pattern on the floor responded instantly, rerouting like living circuitry. The hum changed pitch, confused for a fraction of a second, then stabilizing under her command. The voice returned, sharper now. Protocol deviation detected. Anchor. Confirm parameters. Alira didn't answer. Instead, she tightened her hand against the circle and whispered, I'm done being their bridge. The light surged. Cale cried out as the pull intensified, but this time it felt different. Not like something being stolen. Like something being handed over. A current rushed between them, fast and overwhelming, carrying fragments of sensation, memory, instinct. Cale felt himself reflected back at him through Alira's mind, stripped of status, stripped of fear, reduced to something painfully human. Alira gasped, knees buckling as the energy flooded her. Students screamed. Teachers pounded uselessly against doors. The screen flickered violently. Transfer, 89% complete. Stop. The system voice commanded. Anchor overload risk. Alira's fingers dug into the light. Good, she whispered. Cale watched in horror as the glow spread up her arm like veins of starlight. Alira, that's enough, he shouted. She shook her head, breath shaking. Almost there. Transfer, 97% complete. The hallway roared with soundless tension. Cale's circle dimmed. Alira's brightened. Transfer, 100%. Complete. Everything went silent. The lights cut out. The hum vanished. For one suspended second, the world felt like it had stopped breathing. Then the circles shattered into harmless sparks, dissolving into the floor like dust. The doors at both ends of the hall slid open with a heavy hiss. The screen went black. Cale collapsed to his knees, gasping, his body suddenly his own again, but strangely lighter, like a weight he'd never noticed had been lifted. Alira, he whispered, turning. She was still standing. Barely. The glow faded from her skin, leaving only exhaustion behind. Her legs trembled, but she didn't fall. She simply stood there, breathing, alive. The crowd stared in stunned silence. The system voice did not return. Because for the first time, it had lost control. Cale slowly pushed himself up, stepping toward her like approaching something fragile and sacred at once. You're okay? He asked, voice unsteady. Alira looked at her hands, flexing her fingers as if confirming reality. A faint smile touched her lips. I think so. Cale swallowed, emotion tightening his throat. You saved me. Alira met his gaze, calm returning like dawn after a storm. No, she said softly. You chose to be saved. Students watched as the boy once feared across the academy stood quietly before the girl he had mocked. The hierarchy between them erased in a single moment not far above them. Unseen cameras powered down one by one. The trial was over, but the story was just beginning. Alira adjusted her bag, turning toward the open hallway. After a few steps, she paused and glanced back at Kale. They'll come looking for answers, she said. Kale nodded, feeling the truth settle in his chest. Then we give them questions. Alira's small smile returned, this time not sad, but hopeful. Together, they walked out of the hallway that had tried to define them, leaving behind only fading sparks on the floor and a silent system that, for once, had been defeated by something it couldn't measure. Choice. And somewhere deep within Asterix Academy, unseen doors began to unlock.